Good morning. We want to welcome you to AgeWell Middle Tennessee's webinar today. This is the 5th webinar in our Keys to Living and Aging Well series, and today we're going to focus on mental health and social connection. This is a great topic because May is not only Older Americans Month, it's also Mental Health Awareness Month. And so we are excited to offer today's webinar. We have some wonderful panelists who will be talking with you and really sharing some important insights about why mental health is so important, what we need to do throughout life to take care of our mental health, some of the challenges we may face as we grow older, signs to look for, and where we can find help when we need it, because we know it's so important to reach out to take care of not only our physical health, but also our mental health throughout life. I want to thank our sponsors for this webinar series. The Greater Nashville Regional Council is our series sponsor, and we have several partners for this series: the Jewish Family Service, the YMCA of Middle Tennessee, and Encore Ministry. So thank you to our sponsors and partners for helping us offer this webinar series. I'm going to introduce all of our panelists, and then I will turn it over to Ashley, who will be our first speaker. And one thing I did want to let you know is that if at any point during the webinar you would like to submit a question for the panelist, please do so by using either the chat or the Q&A features at the bottom of the Zoom screen. Once all three of our panelists have talked, I will see if there are any questions, and as long as we have time remaining, I will ask those questions to the panelists and give them a chance to respond. So right now, I'd like to introduce our three wonderful panelists. Ashley Franklin is a social worker with Jewish Family Service, and she will be our first speaker today. Following Ashley, we will hear from Hannah Feliciano, who is a bilingual therapist with Insight Counseling Centers. And then our third panelist will be Betsy Chernau, who is our AgeWell ambassador. She's a former board member of AgeWell and just a wonderful person who's really going to talk about her own personal experience as an older adult. And so I think this is a great lineup of speakers, and without further ado, I want to turn it over to Ashley.
Hi, thank you so much. Happy to be here. And I think it was really important to join the discussion about social connection and mental health and seniors. And at Jewish Family Service, we have several programs that are targeted for our seniors. And so it's just to continue the importance of social connection, to maintain relationships, just like everybody needs social connection to flourish, to thrive, for mental health. Seniors' changing needs are make it even more pertinent to help them maintain relationships and build support systems. Because of their social network changing with retirement, loss of loved ones, physical limitations, it makes it a little harder to keep them connected, to help build their self-esteem, keep their mental health in check, and help them realize when it's time to reach out for help and help them find resources to get connected. If there is a loss of connection, it could lead to loneliness, isolation, and a decline in mental health. The social connections provide a sense of belonging, purpose, fulfillment, and happiness and joy in their life, just like everybody. Social interactions are essential for seniors for their emotional and psychological health, also physical health. Maintaining relationships and finding new connections can significantly enhance their quality of life. Social connections are linked to improved cognitive function, memory, and physical and mental health. Regular socialization stimulates their brain function, enhances memory, and it's a protective factor for mental health concerns. So how do we get seniors connected and keep them connected? I think you can go to the next one. Thanks. Nope, that was too soon, but it's on me. Especially during the pandemic, what we saw was absolute shutdown of any connection with all of us, right? But when seniors are in facilities or at home, it's even more of a concern because that isolation is just compounded. So we had existing programs that reached out to seniors, but we kind of added to them or brainstormed and reached out to the community to see what they needed to enhance their, environment, their life during such a scary time for everybody. A couple of things that we did was to implement COVID calls where we had volunteers that would reach out and just have a conversation to build connections, to maintain relationships, and to get, seniors talking about what's going on in their day, even if it was nothing, just like everybody. It was really important to establish connections, and we had volunteers that were ready to help with anything. We also set up Zoom chat rooms and hangouts. One of our programs through JFS is a lunch program once a month, the Golden Lunch Bunch. And it's just a social activity. There's entertainment, but it's a way to keep them connected to each other and in the community. Excuse me. And we wanted to try to maintain that type of connection. And so we established Zoom hangout rooms and breakout rooms based on different topics, whatever they wanted to talk about, entertainment, music. We also did pen pals where volunteers would write letters or emails. We have a friendly visitor program that, obviously we waited until it's safe, but wearing masks and being outside at least 6 foot or more apart, it was a way to have a physical connection, like a face-to-face, which also gave us good assessments for their physical health. When we have a volunteer that's able to speak to and see somebody in person, even if it's from a great distance, it's a great tool, not only to stay connected, but to see what else they might need. Cyber Seniors is a program to help seniors stay up on technology, and during COVID, it was even more important to help them use the technology they had effectively, learn how to do new things like Zoom. We've all become experts at Zoom, and it was very difficult for some people. Even us, right? We had a learning curve, but for seniors, it's even more so, especially the size of technology, the iPhones and iPads. We had volunteers that would help them call, help walk them through the process if they didn't have anyone else that could help them. Let's see. We had food delivery programs, which during holidays, Passover, Hanukkah, we would be able to deliver like a treat or something or a package, but it was also like just with the friendly visitor program, a way to assess the seniors' other needs and see how they were really doing. And also with social connection, what a huge important factor is helping them deal with the changes not just COVID. Now that we're through it, there's still daily life changes that happen, and it can happen really quickly. And so how do we help seniors stay connected or build connections while also dealing with really tough life circumstances, and at the end of life stage, preserving their quality of life? And that can be really complicated, right? But finding resources and volunteers and people to help is essential in that process too. So helping seniors deal with change and loss when they age is really important to build an emotional support system for their well-being. Several of the ways you can do that is just communication, phone calls, active listening, actually, compassionately just listening to their day, their needs, their fears, and validating it. It's about acknowledgement, building relationships, not fixing their problems, right? Because that might not be possible when you're talking to them. It's really about just connection. Empathy and validation, just like I said a second ago, acknowledging what they're going through, not necessarily fixing it, and relating, being like, yes, it's really tough, even if you not necessarily have a relatable story, but empathizing and being like, I know this has got to be really tough, whatever it might be. Encourage social connections. Encourage, if they're new to a facility, maybe encourage them to get out, meet some of the other residents. Help encourage them to maintain routines and familiarity. That is a huge protective factor in maintaining social connections, building new relationships, and helping to preserve that quality of life when life is changing. Providing information, resources, reaching out to community agencies like the ones here today, including JFS, that can help connect seniors to any resources they might need in the community. Encouraging self-care, whether that is going and having lunch with another resident to build a new relationship, whether it's to get their hair done, if they're at a facility, anything that you can encourage them to do for self-care. Offer practical support. Just like with empathizing or validation, sometimes the practicality of just walking them through filling out a form that they're applying for Meals on Wheels or something like that. Anything you can do to help maintain that connection, help them preserve some autonomy as well. The independence of which goes with quality of life, still wanting to do things on their own, but needing some assistance. And it's hard to reach out for help, like with all of us. Sometimes even when you need something, when you don't have a huge support system, when you don't have a lot of family around you, it's even harder to maintain those connections. And so when you have an opportunity, any of us, to connect or just to have a conversation with a senior, just to say hi, just to see how they're doing that day, any kind of connection you can build will help everybody, help them, help you. And so every senior is unique. Every situation is unique, but the bottom line is social connections help preserve quality of life and relationships that seniors need to keep going. Thanks, and now I will pass it to Hannah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that information, Ashley. That was all really important and prevalent. I am Hannah Feliciano. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I've been working as a therapist for over 5 years. I see a lot of clients with anxiety or mood disorders, depression, trauma. I also work with immigrant populations, chronic pain, and chronic illness. So I'll be speaking to some of those issues today as we talk about the challenges and strategies to continue resiliency as we age, right? We want to be resilient through this aging process. And part of that is really cultivating and maintaining our own mental health and well-being as we age. We all know that that's the direction we're all headed. And we also are caring for others as they age, right? We might be caring for our parents, or we might be in a caregiving role. We might be supporting neighbors. We all know, as Ashley just pointed out, how important it is to help one another. I think the pandemic really taught us that we need to lean on each other in challenging times. So one thing that's really important, as I was kind of thinking about, well, how do we maintain this? And I think it really is for all of us, but especially as we age, how do we find and maintain joy? It's interesting that studies show that the presence of emotional well-being, so just really engaging with our mental health and keeping that a priority, is an important component of our complete mental health diagnosis, and even will prevent the onset of some disability among older adults. So this is huge, right? This is important. And we need to think about how we can maintain that. Something I encourage my clients, maybe if they're struggling with depression or anxiety, I ask them, think about a time when you were maybe younger, when you were engaged with life, and what was it you were doing? What was sparking joy? What was helping time just kind of, stand still? We might be kind of known as the idea of flow, right? And this is different for everyone, but it might be things like gardening, creative outlets, working on cars, exercising, or sports that they used to enjoy, or go participate in, musical outlets. And so even if an older adult can't actually do that anymore, it's still important to encourage them to engage with those things that spark joy. So maybe instead of doing the sport, they're going and they're a spectator at the sport. Instead of playing the musical instrument, they're going and engaging with musicians and going to concerts and things like that. And if they're able and well enough to do the activity, encourage them to do it with them. And those things really just do help our mental health. And then kind of the next piece is, how do we feel empowered as we age, or help empower others that we care for to do the same? And as Ashley mentioned, sometimes our society doesn't do a great job of really just honoring the aging process. We kind of, for lack of a better word, can shut out older adults, and no one wants to feel discarded. That isn't healthy for anyone. And so something that I was really thinking about too, as a meaningful practice that we can do if we are caregivers, or as ourselves as we age, is to create kind of like a storyline. Maybe it's a memoir, maybe it's a storybook of milestones and memories and photos. And this really can give a lot of meaning. And we know that meaning making helps us make sense of our human experience. So that's something that I would really encourage yourself as you age, and or those you're caring for, to do, because that's such a powerful tool. And the other thing I was thinking about, and Ashley hit on this as well, was rhythms, right? Sometimes routines can feel monotonous. So sometimes I like to reframe it as rhythms. What are the healthy rhythms that you are living out in your life that cause you to feel vibrant? And also with that, as therapists, we kind of carry the both and, right? So rhythms, routines are helpful, but also spontaneity can spark joy. And remembering that while we have breath in our lungs, life is worth living. So what are those things that kind of just spark your interest and that feeling of being alive? And I think those are things we can ask ourselves as we age, and then ask those around us who we're caring for as they age. You could go to the next slide, please. So now to kind of dig in a little bit more to the challenges that we need to look for in our mental health and well-being. You know, we all probably, obviously through the pandemic, the buzzword was mental health, and depression, anxiety just grew exponentially, right? People already were struggling with mental health, but then through the pandemic, it was just like this huge blow to our culture and society. But sometimes we don't always know the specific signs and symptoms to look for. And that's what I just kind of want to outline for us today. So, you know, we hear depression, but do we know really what are the signs to look for? So with depression, these symptoms will have to be present for most of the day for at least 2 weeks. That's kind of what we're looking for. And I'm just kind of gonna go down the list so that we have them in our mind. These are things to look for yourself as an aging, in your aging process, and also the people you're caring for. Do you have feelings of helplessness and hopelessness? So a bleak outlook on life. Do you have a loss of interest in daily activities? So you're not getting pleasure out of the things that used to bring you joy. You've had an appetite or weight change, and this is a change of at least 5% over a month, either up or down. Sleep changes. So either this could look like insomnia or oversleeping and just not, you know, wanting to face the day. I'd rather just go back to bed and I just spend most of my day in my bed. Anger or irritability. So feeling agitated, restless, or even violent. So just your temper for little things just snap you off. Are you feeling just like a fatigue that's not just regular fatigue, but like really sluggish and lethargic and physically drained? Are you struggling with any types of feelings of self-loathing, strong feelings of worthlessness, shame, or guilt, and you criticize yourself harshly and you kind of just feel that always kind of over you? Another one to look for is any type of reckless behavior. So you might be engaging in substance use or abuse, any type of compulsive addiction or gambling can be kind of a sign. And then we know that the last two are going to be prevalent in our aging population, but concentration problems and then unexplained aches and pains. But really, if they've kind of come out of nowhere and you're really having trouble focusing, making decisions, remembering things, and then just all of a sudden is your body just kind of like shutting down. Our bodies are so important to recognize and be aware of because they're going to tell us what we need. And then the two anxiety disorders that I see a lot in with my clients are generalized anxiety disorder and panic disorder. Now, generalized anxiety disorder has to be prevalent more days than not for at least 6 months. And this is where you kind of just feel wound up or on edge almost all of the day. You're easily fatigued, again, having difficulty concentrating, feeling just really irritable, headaches, muscle aches, stomach aches. A lot of times anxiety lives in the stomach, or unexplained pains. And then you just have a difficulty with controlling thoughts of worry. So just worrying about everything and all things is just kind of that running worry about daily things. And then of course, also sleep problems, such as difficulty falling or staying asleep. And then the last one that I see a lot of times is panic disorder. And a lot of people can confuse this with a heart attack, actually, because it's a physical reaction to our bodies getting stuck in the fight, flight, or freeze state where our nervous system is in overdrive. So it might look like you can't breathe, your heart is pounding, you feel that chest pain, and a lot of people end up in the ER. They find out that nothing is physically wrong with them, that they are having a panic attack. So we need to really normalize that this could happen and educate what's going on in your physical body. And if that's happening to you or someone else, obviously, if you think it's a heart attack, go to the ER, but it may not be anything physically wrong with you. With your physiology, it might be something going on with your stress and your nervous system. So these are important things to look for, right? We need to be educated about how to help those we love and care for, and then how to talk about this and how to find help, right? There's a huge mental health stigma still. I think we're getting better in our culture. We're obviously talking about it here. We're talking about it a lot more since the pandemic. But I think there's even a stigma towards ourselves, like other people might be going through this, but if we start struggling with this, we don't want to face it. So sometimes something we can use if you start noticing these signs or symptoms in those you are caring for or love or your loved ones is the car maintenance analogy, right? I love using this with clients who might be a little bit like unsure about therapy. And this is just like, think about your car, right? You maintain the oil, at least we know we should, right? You change the oil, you get your tires rotated, you take it for a tune-up. How much more valuable are you as a person and the loved ones you care for to care about your mental health? We know we need to maintain the health of the car for the longevity of the car. How much more do we need to care for ourselves and those we love in our mental and emotional well-being? Another analogy sometimes I use, with clients who may be a little bit averse to trying a medication. If, we're doing therapy and we're getting progress, but really, I think maybe some form of a psychotropic medication may be really helpful in their healing journey and process. I use the diabetes analogy, right? We don't stigmatize someone who isn't creating insulin in their body, right? To take insulin and get the medication that they need. So why do we stigmatize taking, mental health medication or medication to help with our mental health, right? When we're just, our brain isn't creating enough serotonin or other neurotransmitters. It's part of our physical health and it's just not being created. So sometimes we might need it, not necessarily forever, but maybe for a portion of our time, of our life, right? It's not a moral failure. It's a physical thing that's going on in your body. And I think that needs to be really pressed and expressed and talked about, especially because it can be shame inducing, because what we think something's wrong with us, like we're trying and it's not getting better. Well, guess what? There are things that help. And we know research says therapy plus medication gets the best mental health outcomes. So that's something to just be aware of. And then the benefits of physical activity. Now, I just talked about medication use, but this is really interesting. Studies show that 20 minutes of walking, right? I think most of us can do that, can be as effective as taking an antidepressant. Does it mean that you shouldn't explore that? No, if you need it, that's part of the puzzle of your mental health. But also 20 minutes of walking. I think we all can fit that in, right? And that can do just so much change for our mental health and physical health, obviously. And then the importance of sleep, right? Everybody's a little different, but we need on average 7 to 9 hours of sleep. And we know that when we get that much sleep, it helps our brain health and helps reduce the risk of dementia. So these sometimes, we forget the basics and we don't take care of the basics. And the basics really are the foundation to our mental health. Something that I mentioned before, that I work with a lot of people with chronic pain and illness across the lifespan, actually. But obviously we know that this is something that it's not really if, it's when. As we age, right, we will start to have some form of chronic pain and or illness. And it's not always fun to talk about, but it's real. And we also know that it's kind of like what came first sometimes, the chicken or the egg. With chronic pain and illness comes anxiety and depression symptoms. So we have to be aware that that's going to happen. So how do we help ourselves? We know that as we age, we're at risk for more health problems, like I said, from arthritis to cancer to cardiovascular disease, and then mental health issues. So what are the protective factors? And this is all why we're here, right? Talking about how do we protect ourselves. And isn't it interesting that studies show that the presence of emotional well-being is an important component of the complete mental health diagnosis, like I said, and it prevents disability. It staves off some of these illnesses. So we can actually prevent it. We can actually help ourselves safeguard by taking care of our mental and emotional well-being. And then just the mental health strain that you as a caregiver may face when you're caring for someone who is struggling with chronic pain or illness. Because again, we don't always talk about or do a great job talking about the mental health aspect of it. So, you know, how do we as caregivers help ourselves? I think is also an important question to ask. It's cliche, but it's true. We can't pour from an empty cup. We need to do the things that we know. And these are things we know, right? We know. How do we create a self-care plan that helps us? If we don't know how to do that, can we go talk to a therapist about creating a self-care plan? Can we incorporate some meditation? What are the things that really help us to calm ourselves, being in nature? Places where we feel at peace so that we can go and help others, right? And that's especially for those who are caring for older adults who are struggling themselves with chronic pain or chronic illness as they age. Go ahead to the next slide. And then I wanted to just take a moment because I do work a lot with kind of marginalized or non-dominant populations, and you know, even just the aging population, right, faces barriers. But then you take it one step further. If you're a part of that population, you're aging, you're an older adult, but you're also maybe a minority. So that might look like being an immigrant, being a refugee, being a sexual or gender minority. When you might face even more of a stigma, or you might not have even as many resources or social support, right, to help you get the help you need. So some of those barriers to care are actually, you know, are things we kind of talked about before. It's like maybe not being well versed in using technology. A lot of my Spanish speaking clients, you know, they can't do telehealth. It's just they're uncomfortable with it and they don't know how to do it unless you kind of walk them through it and help just with that patience, right? Another barrier is transportation. A lot of times they don't have the transportation. They don't know how to get places. They might be relying on other people to drive them places. Another barrier I see is obviously just being uninsured or underinsured and not knowing where to look for help with their mental health in really an affordable way. So I just think just naming these things is important, that sometimes they can be covert, they can be hidden, and sometimes they can be overt, right in your face. But we all carry, just by being a human, we all carry prejudices and biases just because we're human, right? So let's just be aware of it, know that that exists, and then that helps, just owning that and saying like, hey, I didn't know, and really bringing curiosity, like, how can I help? If you don't know about something, be curious and just be kind and ask, and they will help you understand, because I don't have the insight on everyone's story or journey. Just because I am Hispanic doesn't mean, you know, I understand their journey, or just because, you know, we are an older adult doesn't mean we understand other people in that same category. We have to have curiosity. Every person is unique. And I think Ashley touched on that too, which is really true. So I wanted to share a story from one of my clients, and you can go ahead and thanks, change the slide. We'll call her Paula. She came to me with some pretty severe depressive and anxiety symptoms. She was born in Guatemala. She did come here as a younger adult, so she does speak English, and she kind of was able to acculturate fairly well, but she was really struggling with navigating her relationships with her adult daughters And like I said, struggling with a lot of depression, a lot of intrusive thoughts, just not being able to like kind of just get past that cloud that I talked about, you know, just feeling really just down and not sure how to get out of that. And then also anxiety. It turns out that a lot of where this was stemming from was from her past trauma. And so we started to explore that and we started to work through that. She's been really faithful in coming to therapy, and she still sees me for maintenance sessions, but she has made so much progress. And one thing that I love about her story in particular was she started talking about like, I always wanted to write and I wanted to like explore that, but I don't know how to do that. So I kind of latched onto that and encouraged her to maybe find like a writing group. So she started writing and she joined a writing group. She started writing poetry, started writing fiction, stories. And this was such a beautiful way for her to process her pain, her trauma, and to really grow and thrive in this creative outlet. And she's doing so much better mentally, emotionally, and physically. Obviously, there's still things that come up, but you know, once you get that like base and you can really have a place to work through these things, it really starts to just open up the possibilities of what your life can look like. And I'm just so grateful for her as a client. And she, I always tell my clients that they teach me, you know, so many things and they inspire me. And she really just has inspired me in her growth and her change, and how much more she's able to offer her self-compassion and just be aware of what she needs and when she needs it, and do those things for herself. So I wanted to share just a little bit about her because she's really inspiring. You can go ahead and great, thanks. So the next kind of to wrap it up on my next slide, just I like key points that remind us of what to remember. So these are the 3 things, if you take anything away from what I just shared, is remember the signs, right? Know what to look for, know what depression looks like, know what anxiety looks like in yourself and others, and be willing to ask in a kind, gentle, compassionate, non-judgmental way. Hey, you know, I've noticed this, and we all need support from time to time. You know, let's find some resources, right? So that leads into reach out for support. I always tell my clients to, it's never a sign of weakness. It's always a sign of strength when we reach out for support, always. And that's the first step, is just to say, hey, I'm not okay. And that's okay to not be okay. Life is hard. Life is a struggle. We know that, right? But I think the pandemic really just magnified that for a lot of us. And so reach out for support. The support exists. The community agencies exist. So just find and reach out for help. And then the last one is return to resiliency, kind of full circle. What I started talking about is just what sparks joy. We are resilient. One thing just being a therapist teaches me on a day-to-day basis is people are resilient. We face so many different challenges in our lives. Everybody has something, but we are resilient, and the human spirit wants to continue and to find ways to thrive. So return to our resiliency. And then I'm here as a representative of Insight Counseling Centers. And one thing I love about Insight is that we do offer income-based fee scale, which really helps people who are uninsured, underinsured, have access to affordable mental health services. And you can call our intake line. The number's on the screen. We have an intake line in English and in Spanish. Someone is there to answer the English and most of the time Spanish, but if we don't answer, leave us a message and we will get back to you in a timely manner. And then also just our website to find out a little bit more about us, and it lists all of the counselors, and so you can kind of look at their bios and see who might be a good fit. And yeah, so that's what I have for you all today. Thank you so much for this opportunity to share.
Thank you, Ashley and Hannah, for those wonderful insights and so many important points that you made. I'd like to invite Betsy now to talk with us about her own experience as an older adult and living through the pandemic. And just Betsy.
Yep, I'm here. I don't know where my picture is, but I'm here.
We see you.
Do you see me?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay. I don't see myself, so there. No, I see you. Oh, there I am. Hello. I'm Betsy Chernau. I'm about 2 months away from being 88 years old, which is a shock. Thank you both, Hannah and Ashley. You're preaching to the choir. I really consider myself one of the most fortunate people in the world. I grew up with a lot of love and attention, and I really don't have many physical problems. I'm pretty arthritic and bad knees and fingers and stuff, but I'm basically okay. A year after becoming a widow, which was 13 years ago, I sold our house of 45 years and moved into a condo, which was difficult. And I couldn't bring my cat, which was horrible. So now I live totally alone, totally by myself. It was very interesting. I am now I and me and mine. I'm not we or our or ours. I'm just me. I close the door and wham, it's silent. My children and grandchildren live all over the country, from California to Maryland. And I lost my only sibling about 30 years ago, sadly. And my good friends are just dropping off. Like, as you know, we get older and I lose them. I never thought about becoming aging or being elderly until I became a widow. But I remember watching my mother, who was widowed twice, as she aged, and she kept connected and active and positive until the day she died. And so throughout my life, I've tried to remember how she did this. She did not want to worry her children, me. And so I tried, because they're not here, I don't want them worrying about me. And I tell this to my friends who are struggling. Remember, you're number one in your life. Take care of yourself. Take good care of yourself. It's okay. So I've been involved with committees and boards and all. I'm not doing that much anymore as I'm getting older. I do belong to a book club. I do volunteer at AgeWell and also at my temple, my religious community. And lately I've learned to play, I've never learned to play anything. I've learned to play bridge and mahjong, and I try to stretch my body a lot. I am an old dancer. I danced all over Nashville as a teenager, and it's in my 20s and 30s on every stage. So I love music, and I like to move to the music, which is difficult, but I keep trying. Anyway, I think it's what is important to stay mentally healthy is to try to be positive, which I am, involved and connected. And fortunately, as I told you earlier, I do have a computer, an iPad, and an iPhone. And oh my goodness. And I had a very funny husband, a very funny father. And I think it was contagious, because I don't take myself seriously, nor do I take life seriously. It is, you've got to have a sense of humor. As you age, it's terrible. It's really hard to be old. Sometimes people, I just don't feel like people count us as people because we're old. And you got to keep a sense of humor about that. Getting through COVID was terribly challenging for me. A lot of my friends still have their spouses or their significant others. I do not. I was isolated, alone, and got pretty depressed. There were no meetings, no dining with friends, no bridge, no socializing, no going to services at Temple. But what I did was, I do drive, and I would get in my car every day, and I would put the windows down and play music. I love music. Play jazz or something wonderful on my CD, a CD player in my old car. And people would be out walking, and I roll the windows down, and they would have huge smiles on their faces when I played the music, which made me feel really good. And of course, it made them feel good. I still do this. I did this morning, and I had somebody out jazzing around in the street. Anyway, if I can make one person smile a day, my life is a real success. I did that during COVID. I also, for the last 3 years, have listened to lectures and interviews, and I've been on virtual Zoom classes, local sites. Vanderbilt's Osher Lifelong Learning Institute was extremely helpful. I took a class on meaningfulness, about how if you get into the moment, and if you feel depressed, cry. If you feel happy, smile. Get into this moment that you're in. It was really quite interesting. And I was connected. I attended virtual services at the Temple, which was wonderful, and classes twice a week. This was extremely helpful emotionally and mentally. Really, it kept me going because I was absolutely alone. No socializing in the building. It was really difficult. Nobody. I also think, and you mentioned this about writing, Hannah, you mentioned this. I have written scads and scads of things, essays on my life, funny things that have happened in my life and in my husband's life, and also very sad and serious ones. When I've seen something that just sort of clicked in my mind, I sit down and write a whole essay about it. I've also written a little bio of my life for my children and my grandchildren. I'm it as far as my family is concerned. I'm the only one left. I have 2 children who are happily married. I have 5 grandchildren, 2 are married. My sister, who's gone, has 2 children, 6 grandchildren, and now 4 or 5 great-grandchildren. I'm writing about how we grew up here in Nashville. I've got chapters upon chapters. And I think this is really important for the generations to come, because I remember what my mother told me. I remember what my grandmother, and she said what her grandmother told her. So these are important things to, I think, to hand down to the generations. And I try to tell my friends, oh gosh, why don't you write it down? Write this down for your children and your grandchildren. This is so, your life is so important, and they need to know this. And so I've got a ton of stuff. I really do. Some of it's not very funny. As I mentioned, I was really got kind of a depressed time during COVID. And I thought about it, and I thought, I've lived here all my life. I had all these friends, very close friends, whose children I helped raise. I mean, literally, I did. I mean, some of them I helped learn how to throw a baseball, how to dribble a basketball, how to dance, went through all their dating processes. They're still here in Nashville. They're in their 50s and 60s. Not one of them called. During COVID, I was totally isolated. They knew I was alone. They know my children do not live here. They know I'm absolutely alone. Only I had one phone call from one cousin, and that was all. And not only was I depressed, I sort of felt forgotten. Now, when I die, I know they'll be at my funeral, but I'm alive. I'm alive. Pick up the phone. Pick up the phone. Why didn't they pick up the phone and call? Of course, I told this to my son, Mike, and he said, "Oh, Mom, you taught me something many, many years ago. Don't you remember?" I said, "What did I teach you? What did I teach you?" And he said, "Never pass judgment on anyone. They're going through their stuff too. They really have their own stuff too. They're stuck also. They are at home. They are working from home. They've got spouses. They have older. You never know what they're going through as far as their work is concerned and what their life is like. And they're not thinking of you." I said, "You know what? You're exactly right. I shouldn't judge anyone." It's really difficult. And sometimes I still think about it, and I think, when they see me, oh, it's, "Hey," but do they pick up the phone? In fact, I was talking to my niece yesterday, and she lives in Cincinnati, and she said, "Oh, somebody lost their daughter. Oh, I was at the funeral. She couldn't go because she had COVID, and she's 91 years old." And I was just thinking about it. I said, "Pick up the phone and call her." She said, "Well, I said, "Don't give me any well, da, da, da. Pick up the phone and call. This is important to connect. It's very important to connect." I've experienced it. And thinking about her, she doesn't know you're thinking about her. Pick up the phone and connect. I also have a sister-in-law that just became a widow, and she lives in North Carolina, and she is not technically knowledgeable. And my children, who are niece and nephew, went to visit her over the weekend, and they helped her reconnect her phone. They helped her get on her computer and showed her what to do. She really is not, she's in her 80s. She is not connected and is not tech savvy. Fortunately, I am. It was a lifesaver. I also have a 99-year-old friend who used to sing on radio, and she's got dementia. When I go to see her, I put on music on my iPhone. She's not connected with anything except her telephone. And she starts singing. She doesn't, maybe she'll say the same sentence 4 times in 20 minutes, but she remembers the words to all this old music. I'll put on Frank Sinatra or Tony Bennett or somebody, and with the words, and she knows the words, and it's marvelous. And she'll even get up on a walker, and we dance a little, and music is so important for the elderly. I think writing, and also, but music, particularly when you're having dementia and Alzheimer's, it's very, very important. It just revitalizes you. I know it does me, and I know it does for her, she's having a tough time. Do I have time to tell you a real quick story about during COVID? I had not touched anybody. I'm a huggy, kissy family. We always have. And I hadn't touched anybody, hadn't had a high five, not a hip bump, nothing, in about 6 months. And I went to the dentist, and we had to do drilling and all this stuff. And it was a cap and a lot of stuff, and the Novocaine. And I'm lying there with no mask on, and the assistant comes in, and she's covered up all over. And this was during COVID. And then the dentist comes in, and he looks like an alien from outer space. And they did the numbing and the drilling, and they did the mold and the this and the that. And it was just excruciating. And I was there for about an hour and 20 minutes. And I left, And I started to giggle and I pulled the car over. I had to stop the car. I thought, oh my goodness, it's the first time I felt a body next to me in over 6 months. It was wonderful. I felt a human body connect to me. They were pushing into me, holding on to me, pushing in my mouth, drilling in me. And it's painful as it was marvelous. And I just had to giggle at myself at how ridiculous this was, to be happy that I had gone to the dentist. I mean, that's kind of screwy, don't you think? But I also wanted to say, I've tried to, throughout my life, to remain positive and have a sense of humor. But, you know, all of life is a struggle, I feel, young and old. And thinking back, you know, their joys and their sadnesses, their successes and failures, ups and downs, childhood, adulthood, working, marriage, raising children, getting older, you know, everything is a struggle. And I believe that, but it's all about just sort of getting through, one foot in front of the other, one day at a time. And, you know, if we can laugh along the way, it's wonderful. And if we can't, we're in trouble if we can't laugh along the way, because it really is no fun. Elderly and being elderly and aging, because you lose so much, it isn't pleasant. And after all, when I think about it at 88, what do I have to look forward to? What in life do I have to look forward to? I've done it all, you know? The future, what's the future? Whoa, it ain't much. So I keep smiling, and I give this pillow to whomever I can find. It says, screw the golden years, because I feel it's the way I feel. So read my pillow. Thank you.
Betsy, thank you so much. I know that you shared with me where you got those pillows, and I ended up getting one for my father and my father-in-law, and it did make us all laugh. And just acknowledge the fact that, yes, there are many wonderful things about growing older, but it can also be really difficult when you start to lose your health.
Yeah.
And there are changes, or you lose someone you love, and we need to acknowledge that.
All of it. And,
all
and
of it.
The loneliness of it. And it's very difficult to think about being just by myself. I'm also not number one in anyone's family, and I'm not number one in my family anymore. I used to be number one in my mother lived to be very old. I was number one in her life. I was number one in my husband's life. I'm not number one in my children's life. They've got their spouses and their children, and their children have their significant others and their spouses, and I am number 2, 3, 4, 5 down the line. I'm not number one. It's a difficult thing to think about, you know. It was pretty shocking, but it's okay, because I'm number one in my life, and I've got to take care of me.
Thank you, Betsy. I think that's been a common thread through today that I've heard from all of you, is just the importance of our own self-care, and acknowledging that mental health is just as important as our physical health, and it contributes to our physical health. So
absolutely,
you all have given us such wonderful, not just information, but also advice. And Betsy, thank you for making it real and really sharing the challenges through the pandemic, but also that come along with aging, and ways that you have continued to grow and learn to play bridge and stay connected with friends and give pillows to people that are having a hard time so that you can have a laugh together. Really just, again, thanks to all three of you for being part of this important conversation today. We did not have any questions other than someone asked if we'll be able to access the webinar to share it with friends or share it with a senior group at church. And yes, you will. We will make the recording available as well as a PDF of the slides, and it will be on the webinar library page on our website, agewelltn.org. So look for that. As soon as the recording is finalized, we'll get that on our website, and we'd love for you to share this with anyone that you think could benefit from today's conversation. Again, thank you to Ashley, Hannah, and Betsy for being our panelists today. I did want to let you know that we will be offering another webinar next month. We'll publish that date soon. It's going to be mid-June, and it's going to focus on another important key for living and aging well, and that is our financial well-being and saving for a long life. So we welcome you. That date and registration link will be on our events page on the AgeWell website. And with that, I just wanted to thank our sponsors and our partners again, GNRC, Jewish Family Service, the YMCA, and Encore Ministry for supporting these important conversations. And lastly, we just invite you to reach out to AgeWell Middle Tennessee. We are a nonprofit that serves 13 counties in Middle Tennessee. We're here to answer questions, to provide our directory of services and our resource guides on caregiving, end-of-life planning, and grandparents raising grandchildren. We also have a lot of really good information on scam prevention and what to do to protect yourself so you don't fall a victim of scams. And our elder care coach program is here to provide support and personal care navigation for anyone caring for an older loved one. So we invite you to reach out to us. You'll see our website and our phone number here. Reach out to us whenever you'd like information or you're looking for help. We would love to connect you with resources in the community and help you in any way that we can. So again, thank you for being part of today's webinar. Thank you to our wonderful speakers. And that concludes our program today.
Thank you, Grace.
Thank you all.